Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all good. So I'm joined by my mom today.
Hello.
So I just thought we'd do a video talking about our favourite property resources and places that you guys can go to learn about property. I get a lot of people asking me like where's the best place to start, and I think it's best to start with things that are inexpensive so you can learn about property. So books, podcasts, etc., YouTube channels, whatever. So we thought we'd just go through our favourites. So do you want to start? You're more into books, I feel.
I am more into books, I guess that's true. I feel like I've got a couple of books that I always kind of like mention as my go-to, but I guess if this were for beginners, so I think the book I would have to start with is the Rob Dix book, which is The Complete Guide to Property. Because I think if you're a beginner, what I really like about his book is the fact that he talks about what's your objective in property, how much time and money have you got to put into it, and what sort of time frame are you looking at to invest in. So I think for me his book stands out because of that. So that's my first one.
Yeah, and you really get the complete guide.
You do get the complete guide. The other thing I love about Rob, I mean, he's quite funny anyway, and I listen to it on audiobook, and he's very, very funny, but he's also very geeky. And he's very into the numbers and the due diligence, which is really important because a lot of people go into property and you know, we've seen that and experienced, I guess, some of the excitement and the rush, and there is a big risk that you can end up making wrong decisions that are actually really costly.
Yeah.
So the fact that Rob is kind of all over the numbers and very conscientious in terms of due diligence, I think is really good, and it's a good kind of discipline to get anybody that's looking to go into property into, knowing the numbers.
Yeah, definitely. And he also has a podcast which I listen to called The Property Podcast, which is really good, and I think it's a really good place to start, and they have like a lot of information.
Yeah.
Like I'd say if you just listen to the podcast, you'd be good.
Yeah, I listened to the podcast a little while ago because we were thinking about, with one of our properties, we were thinking about going down more of a social route. And so literally when I kind of like searched about social landlords and stuff like that, his was one of the shows that came up, and so I listened to that. And then he's also got really good resources on his website as well.
Yeah.
So things like, even on his website, if people have got queries like how much housing benefit would you get for a tenant, you know, if you put a social if you put like a housing benefits tenant in, he's got those sorts of things on his website. So yeah, really good, really good resources, really informative.
Yeah, definitely. And on their website as well, you can do like a quiz. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
So you can say like, what's your goal in property? Like, do you want to have an extra income stream? Do you want to retire in a few years?
Cool.
Things like that. And then it kind of tells you what you need to do. So it might be like, oh, you need to do like a more hands-on approach, or do you know what I mean? So you can kind of like go to somewhere like there, and that will give you more of a guide on what you need to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really like Rob Dix Property Hub. I'll make sure I leave links in the description bar below to everything, because they've got a YouTube channel, podcast, books. So I'll make sure I leave a link so you've got it all.
Yeah.
Cool. Next book.
The next book that I've got, I was trying to do it in some sort of order. The next book has to be, I think, Simon Zutshi, Property Magic. Because I think once you've gotten some sort of clarity over, you know, why you're going into property, what it is that you're trying to achieve over the long term, I think Simon's book is really good for then starting to get into some of the specific strategies, and also giving you some really good background to the economics of the property market. So I think it's a really good book. The other thing I really like about it is that, so if you get the audio book, which is what I got, he updates it. I think he updates it about once every year.
Yeah.
So even in terms of things like new mortgage products that come out, you know, they may well be featured in there. So yeah, it's a good all-round book in terms of the different strategies, you know, rent to rent, rent to SA, HMOs, all of that is kind of covered really well. So it's like the next stage on, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And he's also got a podcast which is really good, and I listened to one the other day that was about investing sort of outside your normal area, do you know what I mean? Or investing abroad. And like, I feel like you can really tell that he's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, do you know what I mean? He's not just like heard it and then he's like, oh no, don't do that. He's like actually been through this stuff himself. He's speaking from his actual experience. So yeah, I really liked that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
I think he's got a YouTube channel as well, but yeah.
Okay. And I guess we should mention, because actually I did meet Simon at one of the PIN meetings, so we should mention PIN as a resource. I mean, I know it's funny because I know we're not massively big into sort of like property networking. I know everybody talks about it, but it's just not. It's not really our thing. I don't really know why. We've tried a few back in the day, but it's not really.
I've been to like two. I'm not gonna name the first one because I didn't like it. But the second one was by B Space, who's like really big on Instagram, and that was a cool event. That was like really good. I went with my friend Ashley, and that was so good.
And I went to PIN on my own. I don't think you came to PIN with me. PIN is very good in terms of, you know, cause I think as well, because Simon started PIN, the way that it's put together, again, it's really informative. You know, and they obviously have the different sections. The thing that I would say about the networking meetings and how useful they are as resources, they have some good speakers. So when I went to the PIN one, you know, they had speakers talking about new mortgage products, etc. But my sense is that some of the networking meetings, you know, there are lots of newbies. So, you know, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in terms of, you know, groups and forums and things. But PIN does have some very good speakers. I guess it's not completely free. I think to go to your first one, it may be free or something, or it may be like a tenner or 20 quid or something like that. But yeah, some good information at PIN, some good speakers.
Yeah. Cool. Right, next book.
The next book. The next book, I feel like, and I guess I'm doing this almost like kind of in the order of the books as I read them. So almost like in the order of my journey of learning in property. My next book is called HMO, Property Renovation and Refurbishment Success. And it's by two guys, Nick Fox and Richard Leonard. And I think they're more like project managers, for the HMO refurb. And I bought this when we were about to start refurbing property number 1 into a HMO. And I definitely think there's a gap in the market, because I did a lot of searching for some good refurb books, and I did buy a couple, and when I flicked through them, they just weren't really very good, and there weren't many on audiobook either. And at the time, you know, I didn't have much time, so it needed to be audio. Got this on audiobook. The speaker, the narrator, is not the most exciting, but the content is very, very good. It kind of just talks through a lot of the practicalities of renovating a HMO. It talks about, you know, deciding on specs of things, coming up with formulas, functionality versus style, all of those sorts of things. So lots of practical considerations in quite some details. That was the thing that I really liked about this as a book.
Cool. So the next podcast that I'm going to mention is Mark My Words by Mark Homer.
Okay.
Brilliant podcast. Again, Mark is the type where you can tell he's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. So brilliant podcast. I listened to one and it was like a live Q&A, and literally like learned so much. Like, I think the good thing about the Q&A is like they almost ask questions that you wouldn't necessarily think of, if that makes sense. Like, I think sometimes when you're a newbie, and I found this like at certain things, like when you're a newbie, it's almost like you don't even know what you need to ask. But when you hear other people asking questions, it's like, oh, okay, like, do you know what I mean?
I think that's right. I think it's nice because Mark's such an experienced investor himself as well. So I haven't listened to as much of his podcast, but I've listened to a couple of episodes, and I loved the one that he did with Simon Zucchi.
Yeah.
Talking about, you know, their property journey and the economics and the market. I absolutely loved it. I was just like recommending it to everyone because it was just like two proper heavyweights.
Yeah.
You know, kind of just sharing all of their knowledge and sharing the mistakes that they've made and the learnings and stuff. So it was absolutely incredible. But I know what you mean in terms of newbies, and I think I know we sometimes talk about this. For me, what's great in terms of with newbies, whether it be WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups or whatever, is you can all get motivated together. So that's nice, and you're all going on a journey together. But there's definitely some dangers in that, you know, there are some Facebook groups where the majority of the people asking questions in the groups are newbies.
Yeah.
The majority of the people asking and answering the questions are newbies, and that's really dangerous, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you need to be really careful, like, where you get your advice from. Like, you don't know that they might have just, like, heard something on a YouTube video, and then you've asked a question, and they've just answered it with something that they've heard from YouTube. Like,
and I say this is somebody, you know, I have been in those groups, and I have, you know, kind of offered my advice when I thought I could help. Because you just want to help, you know, you see other people and maybe they're not as far along on the journey and you want to help, but, you know, property is a serious business and it involves, you know, quite significant sums of money, and it also involves the well-being and health and safety of people that are at your property. So it needs to be, I think sometimes it just needs to be taken more seriously. Yeah,
it's not like something to take lightly.
Yeah.
It's not just slapdash.
There's a big responsibility around it, you know, I think people forget that.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, book recommendations?
Well, I thought in terms of podcasts, I just wonder whether it's worth talking about Mike and Victoria, the Inside Property Investing, because that was one, for ages, a friend of ours had been saying to me, you've got to listen to Inside Property Investing.
Yeah, with Mike and Victoria.
With Mike and Victoria. And I hadn't listened to it for a while, and obviously their main strategy, or the strategy that they love, is HMO. Mm-hmm. So actually, in their podcast, and I've listened to quite a few now, so I've listened to lots of back episodes. They've got some amazing speakers in terms of some of the property projects that they've done, the HMO projects that they've done. Mm. So that's been really useful, obviously, because, you know, one of our main strategies at the moment is HMO.
Yeah.
So that's been really good, I think.
I really like as well on their podcast, they have like a mixture of interviews with other property investors, but then they also give the info. So you get to hear like realistic stories, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like people who just are going through it, they're just like normal people.
Yeah. And the other, I mean, one of the interviews that I really loved actually, and this is probably one person I'm going to check out in terms of her resources. So was it Susanna Cole?
Yeah.
From the Good Property Company. What I really, really loved about her interview, because I think they've had her on a couple of times. I think she was on like their 100th episode or something. But she talked very much about the business of setting up and growing the property business. And I just found that really interesting. And just some of the principles, etc., that she used were just really good. So, and I understand she's got quite a few YouTube videos and resources on her website and stuff. So definitely worth checking out as well.
Yeah. I actually first heard of her from another podcast which I recommend, which is Tej Talks, which again, he's got a lot of like inspirational people on there, and like you can hear their story and it'll help motivate you, and you can pick up like a few golden nuggets. So I definitely say, like with our last deal, that if I hadn't have been listening to like his podcast, I don't think I'd have stayed as motivated when like we were in bad times.
Yeah.
Like I feel like hearing other people.
Thanks, Tej.
Yeah, cheers. I feel like hearing other people's stories of like when they've been through struggle and they've needed to like raise finance really made me like dig deep. Like we had to dig deep, people.
We did. We did. When you get that big down valuation, it is not pleasant.
No. So yeah, I think I listened to I don't even know what the guy's called, but his Instagram is something like Brighter Investments, and I listened to his, and he was saying about raising finance, and I was just like, come on man, like what am I doing sitting here, like not doing anything, the deal's about to fall through, and I'm just like so
good.
That one's really good for motivation, inspiring stories. Everyone's very real on there, nothing crazy. Everyone's just very straight up, normal.
I mean, it's a good point to make, isn't it? You kind of, it's a bit like what I was saying about the newbie thing. You want a mixture of motivation to do stuff, you know, to get off your bum and do something, as well as the information. And it's nice to kind of have that balance. Yeah,
definitely.
My next book,
go on.
The next book, so Mark Homer features quite a lot in this, doesn't he? Because the next book is Commercial Property Conversions. Now it's worth saying, because I've read, you know, a good handful of property books. This one, I think I'm now on this, I think the third time. So I'm listening to it, so it's audible.
He listens to it all the time.
The third time round now, and it's on speed as well on this one. But I've also gone back to it in certain sections. So this book is all about converting commercial property into residential. And I've listened to it several times. And when we've been at specific times in the deal, like for example, making an offer, so how to make an offer, I have literally gone to that book, found the chapter of how Mark and Glenn, because it's by Mark Homer and Glenn Delve, and how they actually explain how to even word the email of your offer to the estate agent.
Yeah.
So that book has basically become our playbook in terms of how to do these deals.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's really good. And like, I liked the chapter where they talk about like even negotiating with people and like what you need to say like at a certain time. Like, I've really enjoyed that book lately. I only listened to it like a month ago.
Yeah.
But it's really, really good.
I was well into it. It totally changes the way you think about the strategy, and very motivating as well, because so obviously Mark was very, very experienced, but actually Glenn, the guy that he writes the book with, he's, you know, I think he had one single let before he did big commercial to residential deals. So actually it's quite motivating in terms of, you know, his strategy was almost just go straight for the big deals, and that in itself is quite inspiring.
Yeah, and this is the one where they mention about, like, most people say you should go through sourcing single lets, HMOs, service accommodation, but he says about just going straight to commercial.
The big deals, and I think, you know, it's a fascinating book. It's the one book that I recommended to so many people that are then in property and want to take it to that next level, because the thing he talks about is being the conductor. You know, which if you compare that to, say, for example, serviced accommodation, which you know, obviously some serviced accommodation operators or SA operators have got a very big operation, and they've got, you know, staff because they've managed to scale it, and so they are a little bit like the conductor of a business. But actually, if you've just got one or two SAs, the chances are you're probably still fairly hands-on. Even if you've got a property manager, you're fairly hands-on. But in terms of the sorts of deals you know, that are being talked about in this book, you definitely become more of the conductor. You know, you are there to kind of like get all of the right people in place, you know, a project manager if you need it, a contractor, a planning consultant, somebody to sort out the finance. And actually your role, in fact, he sort of narrows it down to kind of like two things, and really your role is you know, finding the deal, and even then you're going to use like commercial agents and whatever, but, you know, finding the deal and finding the finance, and that's kind of it. That's your role, and then getting the right people on your team, and then they do all of the stuff.
Yeah. I like that as well, because I feel like I get a lot of people ask me like questions about things, and I'm like, but you need to get like a solicitor to do that. Like, you don't need to panic over it. It's not your job to like be worried about it. So I like the way that he explained that, so definitely recommend that one.
And it teaches you, I feel that even though the book is called Commercial to Residential Conversions, it kind of goes back to some of the basic economics about property and property markets, because it teaches you again to think more about the demand in an area, the prices in an area, and whether you should be looking to hold in that area because of, you know, kind of like rental income compared to prices, or whether you should be looking to flip again because of the ratio of like rental income to prices. So, you know, and north and south, and the pros and cons of being close to where you invest. So there is some really, it just kind of reinforces some of the fundamentals of property investing, but it's just that it then kind of hones in on that commercial conversion strategy, which I love.
Yeah, our favourite strategy.
Yeah.
So what other recommendations have you got?
So the last book that I've got, the second to last book that I've got is there's another commercial book that I bought. It's called Commercial to Residential Conversions. It's by a guy called Mark Stokes. It's very, very, very detailed. So it's a similar strategy to the Mark Homer and Glenn Delve one. Very, very detailed, quite dry actually. So I found, I'm just being honest, so there were more stories and more examples in the Mark Homer, Glenn Delve one, but very, very detailed. Probably, I think for us personally, it was almost like that next level. So it's very, very big deals. So whereas I think the first book kind of probably takes you up to, you know, $500,000 to a couple of million. My sense was, although some of the principles still apply to smaller deals, this is like multi-million pound deals. And the guy that wrote it, his background, he was a project manager in a construction business, you know, so he was very, very experienced. But it goes in a lot of detail in terms of, you know, how you manage different contracts and some of the things to kind of look out for. So I feel that as we progress on this journey, if we continue to do more commercial to resi, and as the deals get bigger, that's a book that I'll definitely revisit.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
My final book is just probably one that I should have mentioned at the start, but it's slightly different to the other one. So it's called Property Investment Hacking. It's by a guy called John Wilson. It does kind of try to cover everything, but the thing that stands out for me, it's interesting. It's called Property Investment Hacking because the guy that wrote it, his background is in IT.
Right.
And the thing that I think he does better than any of the other ones, I think, is how to generate leads in terms of properties to buy. This is more residential properties, mind you. So lots of information on how to generate leads. So particularly if your strategy is sourcing, so you maybe just come into it, you've got no money. He's got some really good ideas around generating leads. Now, bearing in mind, it's not the newest of books, so some of it might be a little bit dated, but hey, some of these strategies still work, you know. So that's one worth mentioning.
Yeah, definitely.
And then in terms of on the sourcing as well, there's a podcast that I discovered recently because I kind of thought, should we be looking at more sourcing? Because you do come across more deals than you can ever convert yourself, you know, than you can ever buy. And so the podcast that I discovered lately was by David Siegler on sourcing. Just really good podcast. Just goes through all of the basics. He's obviously, like, you know, really well informed. So yeah, just a really good podcast. Everything that you need in terms of compliance, and you know, because there are lots of discussions around compliance, whether that be, you know, rent to rent, rent to SA, buy to let, all of those.
Yeah. And
he, you know, has regular conversations with the likes of the property ombudsman and the property redress. You know, he actually speaks to the guys that are running those schemes and kind of finds out what the regulations are. And what was really interesting actually as well, him as a sourcer, he talks about how to price your sourcing, and he talks about how to really add value as a sourcer. And I feel that, like, a lot of people go into sourcing, but they, you know, probably got a lot of people at the lower end that are charging quite small numbers, and there's a reason for that, and it's all to do with, you know, where you're sourcing and locations and stuff. But interestingly, he really talks about really understanding the value that you're offering and how you can be delivering a more high value, high quality service and charging appropriately for it. So I think, if, you know, I would say to people, if you're looking to get into sourcing because you've got no cash or whatever, definitely check out David Siegler's podcast. Yeah.
And what advice have you got for newbies?
I've got one more book, I just realised.
Oh, okay.
the very last book. This is very niche. And maybe going to, in terms of like the advice, the reason, my most recent book is How to Get Planning Permission.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And I know that we're probably going to do something about planning on itself, but I'll just talk. I'm not going to talk about the book too much. But the reason that I decided to get that as a book and read it is because of the strategy that we're going into, which is commercial to residential conversions. Planning permission is a really key part of that chain. Now, I'm not a planning consultant, I'm not a town planner, and I'm not trying to be, and I'm not saying we will never use planning consultants again, but I just felt that if I could learn as much as I could about planning, you know, from a book or whatever, it just stood me in a much better position in terms of putting in offers and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I just decided that I wanted to skill up on that particular area.
Yeah.
So that, you know, my advice would be, you know, if you've got a strategy, it just might be worth, you know, kind of just studying a little bit about certain areas of it that you think can give you a competitive advantage. That's all I was trying to do, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And I get people ask me things like, how did you know, like, to just go for a deal? Like, how did you have the confidence to do it? Yeah. What would you say?
Definitely, I mean, for us, I think it was because we had a bit of information. I think you've got to have some information, some education, some knowledge. So because we had sat in sessions with very experienced people in specific strategies, talking through how they'd approached things and going through some of the finer details like planning. So, you know, sitting in sessions and hearing people talk about, so in fact, one of the network meetings that we went to, one of the few network meetings that we went to, the couple, Joe and Jane, that talked about their specific strategy of, you know, commercial conversions and actually listed conversions, so very niche. They spent quite a lot of time talking about planning, and that probably that's what kind of got me interested in planning. But hearing about how they approached it, hearing things like the cost of doing it, hearing things about how you overcome some of the challenges, etc.
Yeah.
I think that gives you the confidence to go for it.
Yeah.
So whether it be that, so I would say to newbies, whether it be something like that, or whether it be that you're in an area where there is a lot of demand for social housing, or a lot of demand for retirement housing, or whatever, just get all the information that you can on that from the free resources or the podcast or whatever. Just, you know, pick your niche based on your area, and then go in deep to go and find the knowledge, find the books, find the education, go and get the training if you want to get it. But the information is definitely out there. And then once you've got the information, you feel more emboldened to go ahead and you know, make those big steps.
Yeah. Do you think as well, because we were kind of surrounded by people who were doing deals, that just gave us the confidence of like, just go for it, if that makes sense?
I think there's a little bit of that, but to be honest, I think obviously some of the deals that we were going for, there weren't many people doing those same types of deals, you know, and that's why some of the deals were good, because there wasn't the competition. I think what we got from being surrounded by a peer group of people that were really motivated and going for deals was that motivated us to keep going and keep going for deals. But I think the type of deals that we went for, I think that was driven by the knowledge and information that we were accumulating over that time.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's that combination of the two that I was saying again. It's the combination of the motivation to take action, and then the knowledge and the information.
Yeah, definitely. You got to have both.
And it's both. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can just like listen to all the books, all the podcasts, but you need to like do something. Like.
Yeah.
You can't just listen
and you can't just do without the information, because that is dangerous.
Yeah. So, got to have a mixture of both.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on my channel.
You're welcome.
So we're on lockdown.
There wasn't much else to do.
Yeah, we're on lockdown at the minute. So if there's any other videos that you want us to film within the next 3 weeks, or well, however long.
We're honestly not just here talking property. Honestly, we do talk about other things.
We haven't actually spoke about property that much.
No.
This is really the first time in 3 days. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this has helped you guys out if you do want to start your property journey and you're just like, where the hell do I start? Hopefully this has given you the resources to get started. So make sure you follow me on Instagram at Leah_Miller, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. No, why do I keep smiling? I get a lot of people asking me me on Instagram at Leah_Miller. Make sure you follow LCM.
I did just stick my tongue out. Do you want to re-record that?
So thank you so much for watching, guys. I was gonna say I hope you appreciate it. That was rude.
You better damn appreciate
You better appreciate this.
A lot of people are.
Because a lot of people be asking me where to start, and I'll name them. Right.